Cheerio everybody and welcome. So I noticed there's a lot of comments on one of my videos, in this case the book review of Hyperion. So I figured I should take some time out to actually respond to some of these. So let's go and let's do that. Ridiculous review. Terrible. I realize it's your opinion and all, but still, terrible. We're off to a great start. The backstories were the entire point of the first book. I was thrilled to read each and every one of them as they were so engrossing. Talk about character development. Okay, Luke Williams, let us talk about character development. So character development involves a character's development. But the problem with Hyperion is all that development happens in flashback. The story that happens for only about 50 pages of the entire novel is not with any development. They don't develop over that period of time. So there's a difference between character development and character history. And in this case, we're just getting the character history, really. Don't know if you realize it, but the entire book is a variation built on the Canterbury Tales. That fact alone made reading Hyperion even more enjoyable. Yes, you can make that argument, Matthew Matthew, you can make that argument. But what I'm going to point out, though, is the Canterbury Tales, which I have read, and I love the Canterbury Tales immensely. The Canterbury Tales is actually more of a historical look. It takes you into the time period of the medieval 1400s or so, when Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales, and that gives you a brief glimpse into the history of each of these different casts and how they interact, because each cast is trying to one-up the other as they're telling their stories. That's not what's really going on in Hyperion. Hyperion's not really looking at a competition who's got a better story. It's not giving you a view of a historical period of time where you are seeing these characters and how they would react in such a period of time. You are getting a fictional look at more of a sci-fi what could be world. And it's not quite the same thing in that sense. Now, granted, the format is the same. You are getting these stories that are told by another character, which, absolutely, that is definitely a parallel. But the parallel really ends at that point. That's the point where everything changes, and it's not the same thing as the Canterbury Tales. But props to you. You like the Canterbury Tales? I love them. Read them in the Middle English. That's my challenge to you. This next one I've actually made a rebuttal to, but I want to bring up a point that was actually mentioned inside of this comment, so let's get to that one. I understand your point of view and where you're coming from, and that is your opinion, and it's fine with me. While the stories kind of put you off, they were my favorite part of the book, but that's just me. I love world building. Just like the companion books to the Harry Potter series, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Quidditch Through the Ages, and Tales of Beetle the Bard, they were there to expand the world of the series, and when an author does that right, is one of my favorite things. I see where you're coming from, Eldano, I see where you're coming from, but what I'm going to say in regards to that is, the companion books that you mentioned, like the Fantastic Beasts, the Quidditch, and the Tales of Beetle the Bard, those are just history that you can read if you want supplemental information. They're not exactly tied directly to the story. The flashbacks in Hyperion, they are all a part of the grand scheme of things. They're the whole essence and point of that first book. And for that reason, it's not so much a world building kind of thing as it is you get these different worlds all together. I wanted to see more of the world where they go to Hyperion and the Shrike and all that. I wanted to see more of that. We got all these different worlds from everywhere else pretty much that gave us this great history and everything, but I wanted more of the actual present day. And that's where world building might have gone in the way, in my opinion, of the actual story of Hyperion. I'm beginning to think you guys don't like my Hyperion review. I love Hyperion, simple as that. It was amazing since in the pages I've read I found drama, detective film noir story, military action, a pinch of cyberpunk, and the thing I loved the most, mixing the stuff for the final homogeneous product. It rather reminded me of the Zalzinius Chronicles of Amber, since I value and respect people who are not afraid to mix things up. It does not bother me, since in my country it comes at two big tomes, Hyperion and Endymion, which each 2 parts. So I just, can keep moving on since I have them all. I'm a sci-fi fan, excluding Star Trek and similar shows. Sorry, I just can't not take that. You lost me. You lost me. I don't know what your point is. Let me see if I can find your point here. Okay, it looks like you got a few things here and there. So the time tombs are traveling backward. Okay, the Shrike is traveling backward, back in time. Okay, so that's an interesting concept. It's a very interesting concept, but I didn't really pick up on that. It didn't really draw me in on that point. You cannot deem the book boring just because you think it's boring. If you don't like it, okay, it's fine, it's your decision, but don't try to pass it as not worth buying, reading, sucking, etc. My opinion, that's what it was. I'm not saying it was a terrible book, it just wasn't for me. And I do make that point, then saying that it's just not for me. So, was this for me? No. If you like science fiction, you might really enjoy this one. It's really not a bad novel. I just don't like the back and forth motion of the story, especially when there was not enough of the actual forward motion to get anywhere. I think that was really the main point of that whole thing, is just that the flashbacks are not empty or needed, and yeah, I didn't say that they were empty or not needed, I just wanted them to be incorporated better. So the other comments on this video, you are free to look at them, they're on the page, but I'm not going to take the time to go into it here because I've already addressed them in my own rebuttals earlier on. So I just want to leave you with one last thought. So this Hyperion essentially is a novel as a setup for the next novel, the Endymion, as it was called in the other comment before. Now, the problem with that is it's a grand setup. It has this great setup, and you are hooked at the beginning thinking, okay, it's going to be about this. And then, at the end of the first novel, you realize the first novel and its setup is just set up for the next novel. That's not a fulfilling novel in itself. It needs to have its own arc in order to stand alone, and it's not standing alone. If you look at The Lord of the Rings, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. They have each of the stories. They're broken up into two parts in the Lord of the Rings books. You've got Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli in the Two Towers in one section, and how they progress through Rohan up to the end of that book, and it's leading you up to the next one, but it's got its own arc. Frodo and Sam, they have their arc in the Two Towers also going from here to there, and it's got its arc. Hyperion has no arc. It's not able to stand alone as a novel on its own, and that's where it draws its biggest weakness. And the flashbacks is what drew it down to that point. And because there was no arc, that is why Hyperion really did not work for me. So keep that in mind. This is just my debate rebuttal, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope you can understand my point of view. And the rest of you who I have actually addressed here, you're famous on YouTube now! Not really, because I don't have enough subscribers to really care, but you're famous to these people who are watching. Thank you for taking the time to comment and sharing your thoughts. You know, that's what's important to me, because we get to then have a conversation like this, or I send you a reply on the same message that you sent to me. So it all ties together, and I think we build a community that way. We share our thoughts, we share our beliefs, and we may not agree, but that is part of the fun. So continue to do that. I will either get back to you via a reply on the comments, or I'll send a video like this out for everyone to see. In the meantime, thank you for watching, cheerio, and farewell.